The Philadelphia Eagles were steamrolling through their season schedule last fall. At 11-2 and with an MVP candidate as their quarterback, the Eagles were getting people talking. Maybe this year's Super Bowl could be the first in team history. But then, North Dakota's own Carson Wentz suffered a major injury, one that meant he was done for the season. As soon as the extent of the injury was known, national commentators said the Eagles were done. Without Wentz, maybe they'd stumble into a win in the playoffs, but the Super Bowl dream was dead. Backup quarterback Nick Foles had been here before. Earlier in the decade, he'd stepped up when starting quarterback Michael Vick suffered an injury, and he'd played beautifully. But after an excellent season with Philadelphia, Nick's play had deteriorated. Then came injury, and he started to question whether he really wanted to play this game anymore. But after talking to the people he trusted most, he decided to give football one last chance. And now he recaptured something with the Eagles. They couldn't lose. Not only did they not stumble when the playoffs began, they took down the Falcons. They beat back the Vikings and earned the right to take on the feared New England Patriots in the Super Bowl. Here was Nick Foles, the man who 2 years before was pondering retirement, ready to run on the field in Minneapolis in the biggest game of his life. The man himself, author of the brand new book, Believe It, My Journey of Success, Failure, and Overcoming the Odds, goes on the road today and explains the feelings inside him on Super Bowl Sunday.
There's really nothing you can do to, describe it to do it justice. I mean, it's something that, like you said, kids dream about. I dreamed about as a kid. But you really don't know what it's like. The smells, the feel, the emotion, the sounds, the sights of something until you're actually in the moment. And, walking out of the tunnel and stepping into the stadium and just soaking it all in, seeing all the cameras everywhere, facing the Patriots on the other side of the field. I mean, it's something that, it's crazy to believe it happened, but it was a dream come true, and I got to live it, and, that's something I'll be able to, cherish and reflect on and share with other people for the rest of my life.
Well, your story and that of your team was storybook in so many ways. You guys really seem to embrace the role of the underdog against this New England team that has really become the New York Yankees of the NFL to such an extent. I understand your just revealed Super Bowl rings even include a celebration of all that underdogs are. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. We were the underdog. I mean, that's sort of, Philly, Philly's history is Philly has always been the underdog, sort of, the chip on the shoulder that everyone wears, and everyone waited so long. And, that's what it was like throughout the offseason, throughout the season at the end. And on our Super Bowl rings inside it, there's a picture of the underdog mask to represent, just the city of Philadelphia, Philadelphia fans, and, just our team in general. It's pretty cool that they included that in our ring.
There were so many headlines. And the story just plays out in such an amazing way. Carson Wentz, who was your starting quarterback at the time, of course, gets hurt, this major injury. You come on in a situation you've been in before, but you see all of these headlines saying, Nick Foles can save the city of Philadelphia. Can you even allow yourself to read and to be aware of those headlines? How do you deal with that, or do you just try to tune it out?
Yeah, the latter, where, you do your best to tune everything out because, people are always going to say what they say, good or bad. That's great. Having the opportunity to, share your thoughts is wonderful. But if you're the person that everyone's talking about, what they say really can start clouding your judgment. It can start getting in your head. So you really just got to focus on what you control in your life, and that's your surroundings, that's your actions, that's your mindset and perspective, and what you and doing things. And so I was really just trying to clear the clutters, how I say it, where I'm not really paying attention to that stuff and focusing on what I control. And that's what I do inside the NovaCare facility where we practice. How I prepare, when I get home to my family, how I am. So I try to keep life as simple as possible in the chaos.
Oh, that's great advice to clear the clutter. It's very related to that. This question, you spend some quality time in the book taking us inside the mindset that a quarterback really has to have. And we see this on TV, but there's no way, I don't think, to really understand just how quickly your mind has to work in the game. When you take the snap, you have to read the field in front of you so fast to decide where you're throwing the ball. So when you say the game slows down, how on earth do you slow that process down when you're in the biggest game of your life?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more to it than people really think. My dad was home, and I was just sort of explaining to him glimpse of our game plan sheet and what I do pre-snap, post-snap, and all throughout the game. And he was just mind-boggled on like what I had to know, how we had to react, and just get to the point where you're comfortable with that. I mean, it takes time, it takes reps, it takes belief in your teammates, and I say that because you can't do it all alone. And sometimes I feel like we get into a place both physically and spiritually where we try to do things on our own, and we don't have the power to. Like, the reason I love football is it's the greatest team sport. You have to depend on your teammates to do the right things, to make the right adjustments, to communicate with one another. And, as a quarterback, you have to get to the point where you know the offense inside and out, you know the checks, you understand the defense you're playing, you understand why a play is called and why it's designed and why a coach is calling it versus a certain defense. And then you have to react. You have to adapt. You have to be able to play on the run, and you have to read and react. So what I just said is a ton of stuff. Like, describing what goes through a quarterback's mind, I could sit down for hours and try to explain it, but it's one of those things where I played for so long, it becomes second nature, but that we still have to work so hard every day just to get to the point where we're ready to step on the field to play in a game.
Wow. That's amazing. Thanks for that window. That's so cool to hear it from your perspective. We're talking with Nick Foles, plays quarterback for the NFL's Philadelphia Eagles, was the MVP of this year's Super Bowl as he's led his team to a victory over the mighty New England Patriots. Now he's out with his own account of his story in Believe It, My Journey of Success, Failure, and Overcoming the Odds from Tyndale Momentum. And because of the generosity of the folks at Tyndale, we do have 2 copies of Nick's book to give away. If you'd love a copy, you can enter the drawing just by heading to myfaithradio.com, look for On the Road, and you can send us a note right there from the page. Well, as you've already made clear, there's a lot more to you, Nick, than the man on the gridiron. It's no secret that your faith plays an enormous role in who you are. How did you find faith? Where does this come from for you, sir?
So I grew up, my mom is a Christian, through her faith journey. My dad, his faith battles, continuing on. He believes in God, he believes in Jesus. But, it's been one of those things where his faith continued to grow. Even it's like all of us, but, he has a crazy story himself. But for myself, I knew I had a relationship with God in high school, growing up, going to church, knowing who Jesus is. But I really didn't give my life to Christ until I was a freshman in college. There's a lot of things that happened in my life. I was at Michigan State, a long ways away from Texas. There's a lot of things that happened to allow me to end up there for that year. Just to summarize really quick, it was, I basically got brought down to my knees in a sense of, I lost my confidence and myself. My arm I just had my right shoulder totally repaired, so it was like 50-60% strength, and I'm trying to recover. And, I'm away from home. No one's from Texas. I'm adapting to something new. I'm in college. Then you're going through the crazy winter. And, when I gave my life to Christ, I felt like a weight was lifted. It was a relationship, I realized, and starting to read the Word of God, not really understanding the Old Testament and what I'm reading. But it was just something soothing. I really focused on, Psalms and Proverbs at the time, and they were just so beautiful. And I just took little bits and pieces and just tried to, implement them in my daily life. And then as I went along my journey, God placed different people in my life that guide me, different mentors, whether it was my strength coach at the University of Arizona, being Coach Ed, who was amazing as a strength coach and unbelievable, I like to say as a pastor, but, he had Bible studies house every Thursday, entering the NFL and, being with our chaplain, Pastor Ted, Herb Bluss, Jason Avant. So there's always been people there that sharpen me, and my faith continued to grow to where I can mentor people as well. And, that's it in a nutshell, talking to you right now. But there's a lot more to me. There's a lot more to that, and a lot of it's in the book. Believe It, along with a lot of other things. The great thing about the book is it doesn't matter your faith, who you are, if you know Jesus, if you don't, if you're curious, you're going to enjoy the book because I'm open and honest about, the journey of my life and the trials and the ups and downs.
Well, and I think one of the reasons it's so fascinating and so relatable too, I mean, not many of us can understand what it's like to have the talent to be the MVP of the Super Bowl, right? But every one of us can understand success and failure. I mean, we live between those two poles every single day of our life, don't we? And the thing that's different though for you is that you experience this, the great days and the bad days, in front of millions of screaming fans, right? In the stadium and on ESPN. So yeah. What role does your faith play in keeping you grounded? Because you've had just such high highs in your career, and then you've had lows as well. How has faith helped you?
I mean, my faith in Christ is everything. I think that just through the journey, it's the thing where, we're always wondering, when we're on the top of the mountain, we're grateful to God, but then we sort of sometimes lose track of that. And then when things aren't going well, we're always like, well, God, why me? Why us? Mm-hmm. Why this? And, I think that was the whole message was, what I've looked back through my life and I've seen, I look at the ups, look at the downs. I learned so much more through the trials. And that's what God does. I like to, in layman's terms, trying to talk to the secular world, and people don't quite know who God is, who Jesus is. I try to say, if you're fortunate to have a father on this earth that really cared for you and loved you, he didn't always give you what you want. He didn't always say you were perfect. He loved you. He thought you're beautiful, but he probably taught you things. There's probably tough love at times. There's probably things he allowed you to go through to grow because he knew you needed it. And why would a heavenly father who loves you even more so allow you to go through it? So that's something that I like to share. So basically faith is everything. Like when I can tell when I'm not in the Word, I'm not, my prayer life hasn't been good. Maybe I haven't been journaling. I feel like days are a little tougher. I go through more. I get a little more emotional. Stress starts getting at me. And I think we can all relate to that. And then I'll realize it's like, man, I've really been distant from God. I haven't really had that strong relationship, even though I believe in him. I love him. I know what he's done in my life. But there's still times where I pull myself away because I forget and I try to do things in my own power. And we're all guilty of that. But, you're in a much better place when, you stay in the Word, prayer, and just, trust God in all you do.
Oh, man. Well said, sir. Well said. Have you ever thought of doing some pastoring maybe after the football career?
I'm in seminary right now in the off season.
Yes!
I started that after my year in Kansas City. Online right now it's through Liberty Online. My chaplain at Kansas City went there, so it was a great connection there. I was able to do a couple of classes after my year in Kansas City. This last year, because we were in the Super Bowl and the playoffs, I wasn't able to do my first semester. Just because we were in the playoffs, I would have missed, that would have been like 3 weeks into it. Uh-huh. So I felt like that was a pretty good excuse. I hate using excuses. And then the second reason was, we were blessed to have the opportunity to do this book. So that was took a lot of work from myself, my wife, Tyndale, Josh Cooley, the author, Carol Traver, who assisted, and just the entire team. So I'll continue next off season, but I would love to get more involved in the church, help at the high school level, be a pastor at the high school level, like assistant pastor, just where I'm, there to love on the kids and share in any way possible. But, hopefully in the future I'll be able to do that.
Man, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. I said that not having any idea that was the case, but that's so awesome to hear you doing that. Well done, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's been it's very humbling too, like writing papers and studying the Word and diving deep. I mean, it's not easy.
No.
Because people are reading this, it's going to affect their life, and you want to be theologically correct and portray everything in accurate light. So, but it's a great challenge, and I've already seen a lot of growth.
Wow, amazing. Mr. Nick Foles is with us for a few more minutes. He plays quarterback for the NFL's Philadelphia Eagles and was the MVP of this year's Super Bowl as he led his team to victory over New England and the Patriots. The new book is called Believe It, My Journey of Success, Failure, and Overcoming the Odds from Tyndale Momentum. And we do have 2 copies of the book to give away if you're fascinated by the Super Bowl MVP who also happens to be in seminary. Well, hey, you can go to myfaithradio.com, look for On the Road, and send us a note right there saying, hey, I would love a copy of that book. So it feels almost ridiculous to say this now, but this is the truth. We're talking to the Super Bowl MVP, but just a couple of years ago, you're in a situation where you're thinking about retiring from the NFL. Tell us a little bit about what took you there and why you decided to give football one last chance.
Yeah, I think my career up to the point where, after the season in St. Louis was sort of a crazy, up and down ride. And I really enjoyed my time in Philadelphia. Unfortunately, after my first year, Andrew retired, but, enjoyed playing for Chip Kelly and his staff. Had a lot of success. And then I was traded to St. Louis, and, I was trying to do everything I could to adapt and, help the team win. And, we had some great wins, but ultimately, we didn't play well enough. I didn't play well enough personally, and ended up having a really rough year. Ended up getting benched, and it wasn't really the benching part. It's more just the enjoyment of football, like going to work every day. I'd really lost the joy of the game, and I really started questioning, like, man, if I feel this way when I step into the building, I'm going to work. Like, I don't know if I can do it because I don't enjoy it. My heart's not in it, and to do something like football or anything in life, like, you really have to enjoy it, or it's just, you're going to dread it. You're going to want to look at the clock, and you're going to want the day to be over and go home, and you're almost wasting time. You're not really doing, anything that juices you, that excites you. So I was having that struggle, and, at that time I was like, I'm going to just pursue, I can't do this anymore. I can't pick up a football. It was a, long 6-8 month process of really just pondering it after the season. And there was a time where, finally I was released from the Rams, and just had a lot of time to myself to really think, talking to my wife, and was able to get away and go on a camping and fly fishing trip, and, got to get out in the wilderness without any football expectations and whatnot. And once I got back from it, the reality of everything was setting in, and I sat down with my wife. We had some tough conversations, and I remember one where, she's always been the most supportive. She's always been my biggest fan, but she knew I was facing something that was, deeper inside me than I realized, that was really affecting me and affected my judgment. And I was basically, was struggling and having fear of playing football. And, I said a prayer just for guidance from God. And I'd said it 1,000 times in this situation, but this was one of the first times where I felt a sense of peace, and really just, he was saying, just trust me, and all you do, glorify me, and don't forget about me. And, I realized at that point that the thing that would take more faith would be to go back and play football, because it's quite frankly the thing I didn't want to do. I knew I had a love for football my entire life, and I had lost it. And I knew that if anyone could restore it and I could use that platform to glorify him, it would be God. And, I called Andy Reid. I had already had previous conversations with him, always had a great relationship and all the respect and will for him. And, just said that I'm going to give this one more shot. I'm going to play for you. You're the only coach I want to play for in this time, in this situation. And, eventually I reported to Kansas City, training camp. My wife was shocked when I told her. And, the fourth day of training camp, after when I was, reading the Bible and journaling, the joy of the game started coming back, and I really started enjoying everything about it again, but sort of in a different light. And, the game, in my perspective now, has changed because of those moments. It was one of those pinnacle moments in my life that I look at as like, there was a lot of growth, but it was a trial.
Wow. What a story. What a story. And honestly, how much more do we enjoy just the blessing of your success now, knowing where you have been? Nick Foles, the Philadelphia Eagles, the MVP this year's Super Bowl, the book, Believe It, My Journey of Success, Failure, and Overcoming the Odds from Tyndale, available now wherever fine books are sold. What an honor to get to know you a little bit, sir. It was just a blast talking with you, and the very best to you in the upcoming season, sir.
Hey, I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you all for having me on. It's my honor as well.